The most expensive thing you can give someone isn't money, it's your attention. Chosen ones, let that sink in for a second. Attention has built empires, started wars, and even shaped the entire entertainment industry. Here's a fact. Neuroscientists have proven that human beings are wired to crave attention more than almost anything else, even more than food or sex at times. That's how powerful it is. Now imagine what happens when you cut it off. That's exactly where you are right now. You've detached, you've unplugged your energy from the circus, and while you're over here chilling, minding your peace, sipping water like it's fine wine, the very people who once fed on your energy are now gasping like fish out of water. They're desperate, clawing for scraps of the attention you used to hand out for free. And here's the funny part. The same ones who swore they didn't need you, who rolled their eyes at you, who said you were nothing special, are now running laps in your absence like a Wi-Fi signal that went down in the middle of Netflix night. Panic everywhere. You'd think the world was ending because you had the audacity to detach. So stay locked in, because in this video we're going deep into why your detachment is driving them insane, why their desperation is the loudest confession they've ever made, and why your peace is now their punishment. This isn't about silence, it's about power. And chosen ones, you've got all of it. Number 1, detachment is a superpower. They can't copy. Detachment is one of those things people rarely understand until they're forced to live it. When you pulled back, you did something your enemies could never copy. You starved them of the very thing that kept them alive. Your energy. You see, the way they operated was simple. They fed off your reactions. Every time you argued back, defended yourself, tried to explain, or even showed frustration, you unknowingly fueled their fire. That was their lifeline. But the moment you detached, you cut the cord. Suddenly, the parasite had no host. The entire setup collapsed because it was never built on their own strength. It was built on your involvement. This is why your detachment isn't just a quiet move, it's a power move. They can't replicate it because detachment requires inner stability. It requires the ability to walk away and not be shaken by the chaos left behind. And let's be brutally honest, these people don't have that kind of strength. They thrive on constant noise, gossip, drama, and attention. Without it, they have no identity. Your absence left them scrambling, because now they're forced to stand on their own, without leaning on your energy. And deep down, they know they can't. Detachment also exposed the truth about their role in your life. If they were as powerful as they pretended, your silence wouldn't matter. If they truly held the control they claimed, your withdrawal wouldn't shake them. But look at them now. Restless, desperate, almost panicked. That desperation is the proof. It shows that everything they had was borrowed from you. Your involvement was their stage, their script, their spotlight. Once you left, the lights went out, and the show ended abruptly. And here's the part that makes it so profound. Detachment doesn't make you cold, it makes you free. It's not about cutting people off in bitterness. It's about refusing to let them use your emotions as fuel. That's why they're unraveling while you're steady. They're desperate for the attention that once came so easily, but you're no longer supplying it. That's not cruelty, it's clarity. It's the recognition that your energy is too valuable to be wasted on people who only thrive when you're drained. So yes, your detachment is a superpower they can't copy, and that's why they're desperate. You ended their illusion by walking away, and they'll never recover from the silence you created. Number 2, your indifference proves they never had real power. When you stopped giving them your attention, you exposed something they never wanted anyone to see, that they never had any real power over you in the first place. They built their influence on smoke and mirrors. It looked solid only because you were standing there, reacting, engaging, and giving weight to their behavior. The second you detached, the illusion shattered. Their power crumbled the moment you proved you could live without it. That's the part they can't stand. People who thrive on control rely on your participation. They need your emotions to validate their existence. They need your arguments to make them feel relevant. They need your constant explanations to feed the idea that they're important enough to deserve an answer. But when you no longer respond, when you choose not to explain or defend yourself, they are left with nothing to stand on. And that nothingness terrifies them. It forces them to face the reality that all along, their authority was not real, it was borrowed from your energy. This is why they spiral when you detach. Deep down, they know your indifference means their reign is over. Your refusal to engage is louder than any words you could have spoken. It shows that you see them for what they truly are, powerless without your attention. And it stings them more than any insult could, because it strips away the mask. It's like a king realizing the throne he sat on was cardboard, and the crown he wore was plastic. Without your recognition, their kingdom doesn't even exist. The beauty of your indifference is that it shifts the balance completely. Suddenly, they're the ones chasing, begging, grasping for scraps of acknowledgement. They're desperate because your detachment has reversed the roles. You're no longer the one proving your worth, they are. And no matter how loud they scream or how many tricks they pull, you remain calm, grounded, and free. That is unbearable for someone who was addicted to your reactions. Your indifference isn't cruelty, it's truth. It proves that their influence only existed in your willingness to engage. Now that you've stepped back, the stage is empty, the spotlight is gone, and they're exposed as powerless. And that realization is what drives their desperation, because you've shown them that without you, they are nothing. Number 3, their desperation is evidence of dependency. The desperation you see from them now is nothing more than evidence of dependency. When you were present, giving your time, your energy, your kindness, and even your reactions, they got used to it like someone hooked on a drug. They may have pretended otherwise, acting like they didn't care, but their behavior today tells the truth. They were hooked. Addictions are tricky. They don't reveal themselves while the supply is steady. They only show their face when the supply is cut off. That's exactly what happened when you detached. You took away the very substance they relied on, and now they're scrambling because the withdrawal is hitting harder than they expected. This is the part that exposes the real story. They weren't in your life because of genuine love, respect, or appreciation. If that were the case, your absence would be met with reflection, not desperation. Real love grieves, but it doesn't beg or scheme. Fake love, on the other hand, panics when access is denied. Their frantic attempts to pull you back in prove that what they valued wasn't you as a person. It was what you provided. You were the endless energy source, the emotional charger, the stabilizer. Now that you've walked away, they're stuck trying to generate that for themselves, and they can't. Dependency is a quiet form of slavery, and they were enslaved to your presence more than you ever realized. You became the air they breathed without knowing it. The way they orbit around your absence now is proof that they were leaning on you the whole time, not standing on their own. It's not strength that kept them going, it was your supply. The irony is, they thought they had the upper hand. They believed you were the one who couldn't live without them, that you were the one clinging. But the truth has flipped the script. Your detachment revealed who was really addicted, who really couldn't survive without the other. And the more desperate they become, the clearer it is that they were never as independent or powerful as they wanted you to believe. Their dependency was their hidden weakness, and now it's in plain sight. Your absence forced it out into the open, and there's no hiding it anymore. That's why they're desperate, because they've lost the supply they thought would always be there. And without it, they're exposed, fragile, and powerless. Number 4, detachment is the highest level of spiritual revenge. Revenge is usually pictured as noise, shouts, retaliation, drama, but the most devastating form is quiet and precise. When you detach, you aren't plotting payback or trading blows. You are removing yourself as the resource that sustained their whole operation. That withdrawal is surgical. It leaves them with the consequences of their choices and nothing to hide behind. They were accustomed to filling their emptiness by siphoning your energy, attention, and validation. Your absence forces them to live inside the space they kept trying to fill with you, and that exposure is punishment designed by truth itself. Detachment reads like a verdict, because it's final in a way reactive responses never are. Words can be lied about, apologies can be staged, but the steady decision to stop participating cannot be easily reversed. It strips their excuses away. It shows everyone, most importantly themselves, that the dynamic was one-sided. That realization lands harder than any angry comeback because it's internal and inescapable. They can't argue with the emptiness you left behind. They can only feel it. That feeling becomes a slow-burning sentence that proves your earlier patience was not weakness, but restraint. There's also moral weight to this kind of revenge. Striking back often copies the harm and drags you down to their level. Detachment preserves your integrity while it dismantles their power. It's judgment without malice, accountability without theatrics. You choose peace, and that choice becomes the punishment. They were counting on you to keep propping them up, and now the world sees what happens when the support is gone. Their scramble to regain what they lost is visible evidence of how dependent they were. It's humiliating for them and clarifying for everyone else. Detachment forces a confrontation with self. Left alone with their thoughts and the habits that once fed on you, they must reckon with the person they are when no one is putting out their fires for them. That reckoning is painful because it's real, and reality doesn't negotiate. Your decision to exit the drama hands them their truth on a plate, and truth is heavier than any lie they told to stay relevant. Finally, detachment is sustainable. It doesn't require energy to perform outrage or maintain a vendetta. It requires steadiness, boundaries, and the willingness to value yourself more than the satisfaction of retaliation. That stability turns your absence into a living sentence they must endure. The punishment is not theatrical, it's existential. In the quiet that follows your withdrawal, they are left to live with the emptiness they once used you to ignore, and that is the sharpest kind of justice. Number 5. They're now drowning in the noise of their own mind. When you were around, they used you like a living distraction to keep from sitting with themselves. Your presence gave them an easy excuse to ignore the questions they were too afraid to ask. Who am I when I'm not performing? What do I feel when there's no one to mirror me? Your energy worked like a numbing agent. It softened their edges, muted the guilt, and kept their anxiety from roaring. Losing that numbing agent means the anesthetic has worn off, and now every raw, uncomfortable thought they've been avoiding comes rushing in all at once. That noise is not polite. It doesn't wait its turn or give them time to rehearse a response. It's the real-time replay of every insecurity, every selfish choice, and every small cruelty they used to paper over with your attention. Suddenly, their inner chatter is louder than their outer bravado. The swagger and the jokes fall flat because there's no buffer left between them and the truth they avoided by leaning on you. That's why desperation replaces arrogance, because arrogance is performative and needs an audience. Desperation is private and exposed. Their attempts to project confidence are now thin veneers over a storm. They fidget, over-explain, or double down on lies because they're trying to silence the echo. But the louder they try, the more obvious the hollowness becomes. People can smell when someone is artificially confident. It reads as frantic energy rather than calm certainty. You walking away didn't create their inner noise. It simply removed the volume control they'd been using. Without you turning it down, the internal soundtrack blares, and it's unbearable. This shift also forces a kind of accountability they never chose. When attention was available, they could defer responsibility to the relationship dynamics, to your perceived shortcomings, or to whatever drama kept the focus off them. Now the spotlight is gone, and accountability arrives as an intrusive monologue they can't mute. The longer they stay in that room with their thoughts, the harder it becomes to maintain the myth they constructed. Their desperation is the symptom of the mind trying to patch over truths it was never strong enough to confront. Meanwhile, your stillness becomes a mirror. You aren't doing anything dramatic. You're simply refusing to be the distraction anymore. That decision forces them to either quiet the noise by doing the internal work or keep drowning in it. Most panic at first because facing themselves is harder than clinging to a familiar fix. Your absence won't fix them, but it pulls away the prop they use to avoid the repair. And when the drug is gone, withdrawal is messy, loud, and unmistakably real. Number 6. Your freedom proves their control was always imaginary. Control is often dressed up to look permanent, but the test of true power is whether it can last without force. When someone claims to have control over you, the real question is, can they still hold influence if you decide to walk away freely? In your case, the answer became clear the moment you detached. You walked away without chains, without bargaining, without looking back. And just like that, their so-called control evaporated. What they thought was dominance turned out to be nothing more than borrowed authority, dependent entirely on your willingness to stay. That's what terrifies them. Their entire image of power was built on the assumption that you would never leave, that you needed them more than they needed you. They thrived on the idea that you were trapped in their orbit, that you couldn't breathe without their approval, their attention, or their presence. But the second you exercised your freedom, you exposed the truth. Their influence had an expiration date, and it ended the moment you chose peace. That kind of revelation cuts deeper than any confrontation, because it reveals that their control wasn't real. It was an illusion that required your participation. The beauty of your freedom is that it redefined the entire dynamic. Suddenly, the one who was in control is revealed to be powerless, while the one who was supposedly powerless is revealed to be untouchable. That reversal is humiliating for them, because it proves that all their manipulation, their games, their attempts to dominate you only worked as long as you allowed it. You stepping out shattered the illusion and forced them to confront the fact that their grip was never as strong as they claimed. What frightens them most is not just losing you, but losing the belief that they had authority over you. It destabilizes their identity because their sense of power was never rooted in their own strength. It was rooted in keeping you bound. Now that you're free, they must face themselves without the comfort of control. And that's a reality they were never prepared to handle. Your freedom is the ultimate proof. It shows that their control was always imaginary, a house of cards collapsing the moment you stopped holding it up. And while you move forward in peace, they are left terrified, exposed and powerless in the ruins of the illusion they once lived by. Number 7. Your detachment revealed their obsession. When you stepped back, you didn't create their obsession, you revealed it. While you were available, they could pretend to be casual, to shrug and act uninterested, because access let them control the narrative. Access disguises hunger as nonchalance. The minute you denied that access, their true behavior came out from behind the curtain. Constant checking, rumors, thinly veiled attempts to stay relevant. Those patterns weren't spontaneous. They were built-up habits of monitoring you, measuring you, and trying to steer the story about you when you weren't in the room. Your detachment simply took the camouflage away. Obsession looks polished when it has a stage. It hides in jokes, in I don't care comments, in backhanded compliments, and in people who always happen to run into you. But without you as a steady presence, those polished moves reveal themselves as repetitive, desperate tactics. The social feeds, the mutual friends who suddenly act like agents of information, the strange timing of messages, every little thing that seemed harmless before now reads as part of a pattern. That's the ugly truth. They didn't love you enough to respect your boundaries. They loved having you within reach. What follows is predictable and uncomfortable. Obsession morphs into narrative control. They begin to gossip, to rewrite your story in public and private, because controlling the story is the closest substitute for controlling you. When you're gone, the conversations about you don't stop. They accelerate. People who once ignored you now have opinions, and those opinions are fuel for their attempts to be relevant again. The obsession becomes self-sustaining. The more they talk, the more people watch, and the more their frantic behavior feels justified to them. Detachment acts as a clean mirror. It forces them to confront a reality they'd been avoiding. You weren't a prize to hoard. You were a person who chose herself. That choice threatens the fantasy that kept them stable. The louder their attempts to re-enter your life, the more obvious the truth becomes to everyone watching. Obsession doesn't age well in public. It looks weak, not powerful. Your withdrawal also sets a boundary they can't easily cross without exposing themselves further. They can try to manufacture closeness or smear you to look important, but in each move, they only tighten the rope of their own desperation. In the end, your detachment doesn't punish them with drama. It exposes a pattern of dependency and entitlement they thought they could hide. And once that mask is off, their behavior stops being mysterious and starts being a warning everyone else can read. Number 8. Detachment shifts the battlefield from physical to psychological. When you stopped engaging, you didn't just walk away from a fight, you changed the ground the fight could be fought on. Before, conflict lived in texts, arguments, public scenes, and the little performances they staged to provoke you. Those were tangible skirmishes you could see and respond to. Detachment removes that arena. It pulls the battle out of the street and plants it inside their head, where there are no witnesses, no predictable moves, and no easy victories. That is the real advantage, and it's brutal because the human mind is a far harsher judge than any crowd. Once stripped of your reactions, they are left to generate the fight themselves. They scramble to replay past moments, overanalyze every interaction, and invent scenarios where they still win. Those imagined victories don't soothe, they amplify anxiety. Without someone to argue with, their thoughts turn inward and start doing the damage arguments once did externally. The mind creates endless variations of blame, shame, and regret, and unlike real fights, these attacks have no rules and no time limit. You can't appeal, refute, or file a complaint against your own thoughts. This inward war forces them to confront gaps they once filled with you: attention, validation, distraction. When they have to face the parts of themselves they avoided, the internal dialogue gets ruthless. They rehearse conversations that never happened and punish themselves for moments they misremember. That private noise is corrosive in a way that public drama never is, because it's intimate, relentless, and self-directed. The person who once used spectacle to avoid growth now has nothing left but their mind's verdict. There's also a precision to psychological conflict that external fights lack. In public, people perform weakness as a strategy or hide it behind bravado. Inside their head, there's no audience to flatter. Every flaw is sharper, every insecurity closer. Detachment doesn't attack. They do that to themselves. And because the damage is internal, it's harder for them to spin into drama or enlist allies without revealing the truth. They're unsettled because they relied on you. Finally, the shift drains them of energy. External chaos is loud but exhausting and often temporary. Internal unrest is slow and pervasive. It lingers, interrupts sleep, and depletes resilience. You staying away forces them to either do real work, heal, reflect, change, or drown in the noise. Most people panic first because introspection is costly. Your detachment didn't cause their unraveling, it removed the props that let them avoid themselves. That's why the battlefield change is decisive. You didn't fight them, you made them fight the one opponent they can't win against without real work, their own mind. Number 9, you're not cold, you're clear. Detachment is often misread as coldness because people mistake distance for indifference, but the truth is sharper and kinder. You didn't stop feeling, you stopped being maneuvered by your feelings. There's a huge difference between being numb and being lucid. Being numb is a survival glitch. You shut down because the pain is too much. Being clear is a skill you develop. It requires honesty, self-worth, and the discipline to refuse becoming someone else's emotional puppet. When you choose clarity, you refuse to let your empathy or compassion be hijacked into guilt, drama, or obligation. You see the dynamics for what they really are instead of what you wish they were. And that clarity forces others to confront a reality they depended on you not seeing. That's what unnerves them. People who built their identity around manipulating your reactions counted on your fog. They relied on confusion, explanations, and emotional reactivity to hide selfish patterns. Your new clarity removes their camouflage. Instead of fueling their behavior by getting angry, anxious, or defensive, you observe, set boundaries, and move on. That doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you won't be pulled into a narrative that steals your energy. Being clear also means you can act with purpose rather than reflex. Decisions stop being emotional reflexes and become deliberate choices aligned with your values. You can still care deeply, but you are no longer available to be used as a safety net for someone else's inability to grow. That level of presence without entanglement looks strange to people who profit from chaos. It looks like strength, and to them, it looks like rejection. They confuse it with cruelty because they're used to being able to provoke a reactive answer out of you. When that answer doesn't come, they lose their leverage. Clarity gives you freedom. freedom from the drama loop, from endless justification, from the exhausting need to prove yourself. It also forces honesty in relationships. Either the other person rises to meet you, or their patterns become obvious and unsustainable. In public, it may read as calm or distant, but underneath it's a rigorous practice of self-respect. You keep your heart intact while refusing to let it be the currency others spend without permission. That steadiness is rare, and it rewires the dynamic. What used to be a battleground for their control becomes a clear field where truth shows itself. They panic because their tricks stop working, and they have to reckon with who they are when you are no longer willing to be the fog that hides them. Number 10. Their desperation proves they never wanted you. They wanted access. Desperation is a language in itself, and when you look closely, it tells you everything you need to know about what someone truly valued. When you detached, you didn't just remove yourself. You removed the access they had grown entitled to. Genuine people, the ones who love you for you, know how to let go with respect. They may hurt, they may feel the loss, but they grieve in silence and with dignity because their love was never rooted in ownership. Fake ones, though, unravel. They panic, they scramble, they plot, because what they miss isn't you as a human being, it's the access you once gave them. That access wasn't small. You carried energy that brightened rooms, ideas that sparked solutions, loyalty that stood firm even when it wasn't deserved, and light that gave others a sense of belonging. To people who live off others instead of building their own foundation, that kind of access is priceless. It makes them feel stronger, smarter, and more relevant than they actually are. So when you stepped back, the loss they felt was less about your absence and more about the privileges they no longer had the right to enjoy. Desperation exposes entitlement. If they truly saw you as valuable in yourself, they would respect your decision to step away. But their frantic attempts to pull you back in show that they never separated you from the benefits you carried. You were their power source, their sounding board, their constant reminder that they mattered. Without you, their world dims, and instead of sitting in that darkness and learning to generate their own light, they chase you to try and reclaim what's gone. This is why their behavior looks so chaotic now. It's not grief, it's withdrawal. They've lost the easy supply of energy you used to provide, and they don't know how to replace it. Their desperation proves they were never really connected to your soul, they were connected to your output. And that's why they're fighting so hard, because deep down, they know they can't find another version of you. Your detachment, then, is a revelation. It shows you who valued your humanity and who only valued the benefits of being near you. Their panic is the confession. They didn't want you, they wanted access. And now that it's denied, they are exposed for exactly who they are. Number 11. Detachment is the graduation ceremony of the spirit. Detachment at its highest level is not escape, it's elevation. When you detach without bitterness, you are proving that you've finally mastered the very lesson that life, and even your enemies, were forcing you to confront. The beauty is that detachment isn't about not feeling. It's about not being chained to those feelings. It's about reaching a point where validation no longer fuels you, revenge no longer tempts you, and recognition no longer defines you. That shift is nothing short of a graduation ceremony for the spirit. Think of how a graduation works. You don't keep sitting in the classroom after you've passed the final exam. You don't keep rewriting the same papers once the professor has stamped your growth as complete. You walk across the stage, receive your acknowledgement, and move into a new level of freedom and responsibility. That's exactly what detachment signals. You've passed. You've demonstrated to yourself and to the universe that you no longer need to keep proving who you are to people who refuse to see it in the first place. Meanwhile, those who tested you are still stuck in the same classroom, facing the same exam, rewriting the same failed answers. They're trapped in cycles of bitterness, envy, and control because they never learned the lesson you've now mastered. And that's the silent victory. Your life has shifted to another level while theirs remains frozen in repetition. They may still gossip, they may still plot, but all of that energy is happening in a grade you no longer attend. You've outgrown the environment that once held you hostage. Graduation energy is unmistakable. It comes with a calm that others can't understand. They mistake it for arrogance, but it's really closure. You no longer crave a seat at their table because you're already dining in a higher hall. You no longer seek their applause because you've realized the crowd was never qualified to judge your performance in the first place. And that's why detachment is powerful. It isn't silence rooted in fear, it's silence rooted in completion. You don't respond because the test is over. You don't chase because the lesson is done. You don't fight because the battle was already won the moment you decided not to play. That is true graduation, walking the stage of spiritual maturity while they remain stuck in remedial courses, trying to pass what you've already outgrown. Number 12, their desperation is a public confession. Their desperation is the loudest confession they'll ever make, and the irony is, they don't even realize they're screaming it. When you were present, they had the luxury of pretending you were ordinary, disposable, replaceable. They minimized you to maintain the illusion of control. They made it seem like they could take you or leave you, like your presence was nothing more than a passing option. But the moment you detached, the mask slipped. Suddenly, their words no longer align with their actions. They said you didn't matter, yet everything they do now revolves around trying to reel you back in. That contradiction exposes the truth more than anything you could ever say. The human ego is tricky. It hates admitting loss, but desperation has no filter. It's not strategic, it's not subtle, it's raw. The panic in their moves is the testimony they swore they'd never give. Gossiping about you, checking for you, sending flying monkeys, staging drama, trying to provoke you, all of it is a confession. Each desperate act says, "I lost something I can't replace." It reveals that their original arrogance was nothing more than performance. And now the audience is watching them unravel. And here's what makes it even more brutal. Desperation doesn't stay private. People around them notice. Friends, family, co-workers, even strangers, they all see the slip. They hear the obsession in their voice when your name comes up. They notice how much of their time and energy is spent circling around someone they claimed was nothing. Desperation is self-betrayal because it announces to the world exactly what they tried to deny, that you were valuable beyond measure, and losing you left them starving. For the chosen one, this is the hidden justice. You didn't need to argue your worth. You didn't need to prove your value. You didn't even need to clap back. Your absence forced them into a trial where their own behavior testifies against them. And the verdict is clear. They underestimated you, and now they can't undo it. That's why desperation is powerful. It's an involuntary confession, one that doesn't just reveal what they lost, but highlights who you truly are. Their arrogance has been silenced, their pride dismantled, and their performance exposed. They said you didn't matter, but now their desperation is telling the world the truth. You mattered more than they ever dared admit. Number 13. Detachment turns the spotlight back on them. Detachment has a way of flipping the entire script without you lifting a finger. When you were present, you were the convenient target. Every insecurity, every failure, every unhealed wound they carried could be projected onto you. You became the lightning rod for their hate, envy, and chaos. They could point at you and say, "That's the problem." As long as you stood within reach, you absorbed the heat and carried the blame. But once you detached, that cover was ripped away, and suddenly the spotlight swung back onto them. Now there's no shield, no scapegoat, no distraction. Every ugly thing they hurled at you has nowhere left to land, so it rebounds back into their own lives. The gossip doesn't stick anymore because you're not there to validate it with a reaction. The envy has no outlet, so it festers into bitterness. The chaos they once pinned on you is now exposed as theirs alone. Detachment acts like a mirror, forcing them to face what they spent years avoiding, themselves. And here's the brutal truth. They can't stand the reflection. It's one thing to hate you when you're nearby, it's another to realize the hate was always self-directed. You weren't the root of their misery, you were simply the placeholder. Without you, they're left with silence that echoes their failures, loneliness that screams their inadequacies, and choices that reveal their true character. That's a prison most people can't survive in, and your absence handed them the key they refused to use. This is why detachment is so unsettling to them. It forces accountability without a single argument. They can't pin their brokenness on you anymore. They can't run from the mess in their mind or the truth of their actions. The spotlight exposes the fraud, and once people see it, there's no turning back. Others start to notice the cracks, the contradictions, the chaos that never leaves no matter who's in their life. The narrative collapses because the scapegoat has left the stage. For you, this is liberation. For them, it's torment. Detachment flipped the roles. You gained clarity and peace, while they were left under the very light they tried to blind you with. And under that spotlight, their own truth is unbearable. They're not fighting you anymore, they're fighting the mirror. Number 14. Your detachment is a prophecy of their future. Your detachment wasn't just a quiet exit, it was a prophecy written in motion. The very moment you pulled back, their decline began. They may put on a show, they may cover it up with fake smiles, noise, or distractions, but desperation never lies. It's the purest evidence that something inside them has already started to decay. You didn't just walk away, you triggered the unveiling of their future. And here's the part that eats at them the most. They know it, even if they won't admit it. When you were present, they fed on your stability, your ideas, your energy, your ability to hold things together. You were the thread keeping their illusions from unraveling. The moment that thread was cut, their world began to come apart, piece by piece. At first it might look subtle. Relationships breaking down, opportunities slipping through their fingers, friendships souring, health declining. But little by little the cracks widen. Your detachment revealed that their so-called strength was never theirs. It was borrowed. And when the lender walked away, the debt of emptiness came due. That's why your absence haunts them like a shadow. It's not just about missing you, it's about fearing what's coming next. Because they can already feel the slow collapse, the way a building creaks before it caves in. And deep down, they know the truth. Your detachment wasn't an accident, it was divine timing. It was the universe drawing a line and saying, this far and no further. What follows is the result of every seed they sowed, every act of sabotage, every ounce of poison they tried to pour into your life. Without you there to buffer the consequences, they are left to reap their own harvest in full. The prophecy of detachment is brutal because it doesn't need words to declare itself. It's written in the unfolding of events. It's seen in their unraveling composure, in the hollow attempts to replace what they lost, in the way they keep circling your name while trying to pretend you don't matter. Desperation is their confession, but decline is their destiny. And no matter how much they fight, spin, or deny, they can't outrun what your absence has already set in motion. Your detachment is not just about your peace, it's about their future. A future that looks emptier, darker, and weaker without the very presence they once dismissed. That's why they panic. That's why they cling. Because deep down, they know the prophecy has already begun. The truth is simple. Detachment is not weakness, it is mastery. Every move you've made, every moment you've stepped back, has revealed what others could never see when you were entangled in their chaos. Your absence has exposed their obsession, unraveled their illusions of control, and forced them to face the noise, emptiness, and consequences they once projected onto you. Their desperation is proof, their scramble is confession, and their unraveling is prophecy. What they mistook for power was always borrowed, dependent, and fragile, while your freedom has proven that true strength is calm, clear, and untouchable. You've passed every test they tried to impose on you, but in the process you've graduated into a realm they will never reach. While they chase shadows, you move with clarity. While they drown in the chaos they created, you stand rooted in the peace they cannot touch. Every desperate act, every frantic attempt to pull you back only confirms the reality you've long known. Your energy, your presence, your light were never theirs to control. And now that you've withdrawn, the truth cannot be denied. This is more than detachment. It is revelation. It is judgment disguised as peace. It is freedom that speaks louder than their chaos ever could. You don't need to strike, to argue, or to prove yourself. Your absence does it all. The universe watches, the world notices, and the only power they have left is the realization of their own failure. And in that space, You thrive, so stand in it. Own it. Your detachment has turned their world upside down while elevating yours. What they feared most, your freedom, your clarity, your refusal to be controlled, is exactly what makes you untouchable. They are desperate, yes, but that desperation is your victory. It confirms everything. They never wanted you, they only wanted access. They never had power, they only had your energy. And now, their collapse is inevitable while your ascent is undeniable. You have mastered the highest art of existence, walking away without regret, without bitterness, and without fear. That is the power of the chosen ones. And as you rise, the world finally sees what they always underestimated. You are untouchable, unstoppable, and undeniable. If this message resonated with you, don't just watch in silence. Let it spark action. Hit that subscribe button to stay connected with content that awakens, elevates, and exposes truths most people can't face. Give this video a like if it opened your eyes. Comment below to share your own experiences or revelations, and share it with anyone who needs to understand the power of detachment and the strength of walking away. Your engagement not only supports the channel, but also spreads these life-changing truths to those who need them most.